Challenger. We're at what is known as the Bishop's Palace in Llandaff, about 100 yards from the cathedral, and there's the cathedral school just over here to the south, about 100 yards down there, and this is the grounds of the fortified part of the old Bishop's Palace of Llandaff. And I would imagine the dates of this are probably somewhere around 4th century, if not earlier.
When was the first church supposedly put on this site then, Tim?
Right, we've got in Wilson and Blackett's records, we've got in their works, they've looked back and they've said that the first church of Llandaff was established by King Llyrug, who was the same king who King Lear became in Shakespeare's play, and he dates from the 2nd century. No, he doesn't. He dates from the 1st century. I beg your pardon. And those records wouldn't be, their creation. That would be stuff that they'd look back at either in the Liber Landavensis or other works, maybe the Brutes. I think it certainly appears in Dugdale's Monasticum Anglicanum.
And you found a copy of one of them the other day, didn't you?
I've had the privilege to go somewhere to a local castle and been given access to their library and have a look at it. Yeah, it's very interesting. And Dugdale was from Merivale up in Warwickshire, which is, and the family still have the home up there. They also have a splendid library up there, I'm sure. And there is an association with that area with Arthur I, who was 7 generations before Arthur II.
Wow.
So it rather ties in quite nicely.
Yeah. And you thought that King Lear, I can't say the Welsh name for him.
Llyrug. Yeah.
And he was giving money to the church.
Yes. Well, he's Christian himself. He was an early Christian king.
Early Christian, so that's before the year 200 AD.
Yeah, and it was well before Christianity was in Rome, when they were still persecuting Christians.
So it was well before Christianity was in Rome, which didn't really get there officially until Constantine, is that right?
Which is a bit of an unpopular history.
Very unpopular
with the church
history.
And the establishment. There we go.
So here we are in the Gatehouse then.
Yeah, you can see there were turbulent times if they needed to have this sort of fortification, can't you?
Definitely. So protecting the cathedral, etc., from raiding Vikings and Saxons.
Yeah, and protecting the bishop as well.
From his own flock.
And it may well have been a later thing where you had bishops who weren't British bishops, who weren't exactly liked by the local the locals, Would
there have been a problem with the country religion, the pagan religion? The Druids, maybe?
No,
not at all.
When Christianity, there's this is Wilson and Blackett again. There's evidence there that according to them, that the Druids were the first people who were invited to be members of the Christian Church and actually lead it. So there was, it appears there was quite the opposite. There was no conflict. It was a symbiosis and a very mutual understanding of spirituality and similar ethics. And I think one thing that's also appeared in their work, which I recall, is that if you go further back with the Hebrews weren't a tribe of any description. They were a group of like-minded people.
Ah.
And that's and out of Egypt. So the early Hebrew and the Egyptian were very, very similar to the early British language because they all had the same root. So there was no no problem with that, and that's why Ross's work and on the hieroglyphs is so easily relevant to all that. You know, it just all dovetails in properly.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, I saw a coin on Facebook discovered the other day, and it was Hebrew, but it looked exactly like Coilbrun.
Yeah.
It's, you know, to an untrained person, you couldn't see much differences.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with the Druids, do you think it's because they maybe believed in everlasting life or survival of consciousness beyond physical death, which is essentially the Christian message, isn't it?
I suggest it's due to the fact that they had a common belief in the continuation of the spirit after death.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would be pretty fundamental. And that early type of Christianity, which is shown in the Nag Hammadi scripts and shown in the Dead Sea Scrolls, is a bit different to our current Christianity, which is agnostic, which is unknowing. There we go.
So that's the meaning of the word agnostic, is it? I always thought I was
ignorant.
Well, I definitely was.
Yeah.
I used to think I was agnostic. I definitely was.
Maybe we all still are.
Maybe I'm a little more enlightened now through videos about our ancient history. So we're going through the Gatehouse into the light. So where did you go to school then, Tim?
Junior school was around the corner on the left. Sorry, that was my infant school. My junior school was down there, just behind this white building, and my third school was down there through that door. So, geographically, rather close to each other, I would say.
And hence an in-depth knowledge of this area.
Yeah. Cross at Llandaff, Paul. We've got the cross there, and I don't know where I've read this, but I've read this very recently. All this base has been rebuilt in recent time. The cross is not original, although I think possibly the bottom half of it might be, because the bottom half of the cross, if you look at it, looks a lot older than the thing. And certainly the socket in the base, in this bit here, according to stuff I've read, don't ask me to tell you where, but the socket was the important bit. In the early church, was in British it was a core, and core means either choir or what else?
Circle.
Circle. That's it. Well done. And so the gathering occurred with the people bringing their own cross. So there wouldn't have been a stone cross in there originally. The meeting would be outdoors, and the base stone was the important bit, because they would bring their own cross and slot their cross into the socket in the ground to hold the cross secure and have their religious gathering. And that was a new thing to me the other day, which was,
very interesting.
Yeah, which was good.
So the important bit is not the whole length of that cross.
In the very earliest.
It's the very earliest worship centred around that stone, which has a hole cut in it for the insertion of the travelling wooden crosses.
That's right. That's right.
What do you suppose they said in their sermons then around that stone?
Pass.
You cannot die.
There we go. I'll just show you a few little bits and pieces that I've picked up over the years that are interesting around here, and lots more inside there.
Excellent.
Okay.
Can't wait. And there's the cathedral, and it's had a little bit of work on it by the look of it.
And that's the old bell tower that used to be a pub.
And
what was behind the pub?
So that's the bell tower that was behind a public house. So that's the Lich Gate. What is the Lich Gate? Oh, the Lich Gate is what you get on the path going into a church, isn't it?
Yeah.
With a little roof over it. And here we have a fabulous example of a stone roof.
It's not a very deep slot, is it?
Um,
More likely a font.
Font or a cross stone?
Don't know. If it's a slotted stone for a cross, it's not a very deep one. You'd want a deeper slot than that, wouldn't you? For could have been a slotted stone for a cross that's subsequently been reworked into a font, and at some point.
So this area is where the German mine of 1942 landed and blew out that wall there. Then, is it?
Yeah, you can see the newer stonework that's in there.
The actual mine landed where the monument is, but there. There's the bell tower up on the hill. It's impressive, mind, isn't it? Even if it is all Norman.
It is.
And what did you say? It's all Norman. Norman.
Everything's Norman.
Even the bishop is Norman.
I don't know. Everybody's Norman wisdom.
And the friar is Norman. What's this cross here then?
That's somebody's memorial. William Daniel Conybeare. And there's a local road named Conybeare Road, named after him. He was the dean of this cathedral for 11 years. 1857. Passed away. 7. Passed away.
George slaying the dragon.
Cross on the shield.
A cross on the shield, yeah. And he's an angel.
Yeah, and he's enlightened because he's got the halo around his head. So he's St. George. Or Gwyrth in Welsh.
Gwyrth. How do you reckon that's spelled?
G-W-E-R. G-W-E-I-R. Double D.
And who is Gwyrth in?
Well, there's a St. George's, place called St. George's, just to the south of St. Fagans in Cardiff. And St. Fagan was an early bishop who went to Rome to consult, and I think he was 2nd century.
Right.
And of course, there's a place called St. Fagans next to St. George's.
Right.
Yeah.
So you think that is the St. George then?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
That's something for somebody to look into. There you are.
Well, I'm thinking Alan Wilson says in one of the books, possibly Holy Kingdom, that Joseph of Arimathea
Received that shield.
received the shield.
Yeah. The red cross on the white background.
Who did he receive it from?
Well, was that Gwyrth or was it Averagus? We'll have to go back and reread it. Too much info.
What I'm thinking is St. Arimathea did a walkabout, went up through Clewell, which is by Crickhowell, left a stone showing the progress. It wasn't progress through Wales, it was progress from the Middle East to get to Britain, passing the pyramids. In other words, it's the Exodus and the journey of the 10 tribes. So it's supposedly lost. And he takes a big white banner up to Gwyrth. I can't say it. Gwyrth. Gwyrth. Up to Gwyrth, who was in the Midlands, High King of Britain at the time. And the red banner, the white banner, had a great big red cross on it. So the English flag of a white banner and red cross is the oldest on the island.
There we go. But of course, our heraldry only started with the Normans. There was no heraldry before that.
So did nobody have flags?
Unless, of course, we find something in the cathedral that disproves that.
Oh, excellent.
Apart from that.
Excellent.
And I think right. Okay. Interesting thing here, Paul, is somebody has laid out a beautiful little garden of remembrance. It's situated on the north side of the Dyfrig chapel, which has got the window of the kings in it. And actually that's the window of the kings there. And we've got a situation where the dimensions of the first church in Llandaff was said to be 15 foot across, 27 foot long, with a 12-foot apse or arch curved area at one end. And interestingly, whoever has designed and laid out the garden has used precisely these same dimensions that were written down for the first church in Llandaff. Obviously not a cathedral then, but the first church in Llandaff, dated probably 1st or 2nd century. I've got an old map with founded 863 on it. 163 on it. I've seen various other maps, old maps with 160, 180. So this church was here particularly early. Whether this was the site, who knows? But very interesting that somebody's taken those dimensions and used it for a garden of remembrance. So if somebody knows something.
And you know quite a bit, Tim. Somebody knows something. Very interesting.
His children have dedicated this window to him. I've now found out who King Cadwallader is a title, it's not a name. Cadwallader isn't somebody's name. But I've now found out who that Cadwallader is. Because I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And I thought at first it was Gwaednath. Gwaednath was one of Arthur's sons.
All right, yeah.
But it's not. It's Morgan. Morgan of Glamorgan. Morgan Munvawr, that's him. So what you've got is you've got King Teudrig, who is King Arthur's granddaddy. We know where he's buried. We've got King Arthur. We now know where he's buried. Arthur II. And we've got King Morgan, and I'm sure in the books we know where he's buried. It might be Herefordshire. I can't recall where it is, but we do know where Morgan Munvawr is buried. So you've got three kings, all part of the same family.
Isn't it true that you're not allowed to put a picture of a king on a window in a cathedral unless
He was a king.
he was a king, an actual person,
I
king?
haven't seen Mickey Mouse or Ronald McDonald in a window, so I reckon he's true. I reckon he's a real person. And of course the big question is then, if we've got King Arthur and his granddaddy, King Teudrig, and King Arthur's son, King Morgan Munvawr there, it asks the question, where is King Myrick? Okay, and he's over there with that lady, the tomb's to your left there. That's King Myrick's tomb. And he's not a saint because his body is corruptible and has rotted. So he is a king who did not become a saint. King Teudrig retired to, in 555 AD, retired to Mathen. No, he didn't. He was buried at Mathen. He retired to Tintern.
Yeah.
And he was killed in a raid by the Saxons coming across the ford at Tintern. And he wanted to be buried on Flatholm in just off Cardiff there. But he didn't make it. He died on the way. His son Myrick tending to him at Pwll and Teudrig dying at Teudrig's well. And then they built a church around him at Mathen called St. Teudrig's, and it's still there today, and it's the most impeccably looked after church. Yeah, what's also interesting is that the window's dedicated to a guy called Baron of Merthyr, who was William Thomas Lewis. And William Thomas Lewis founded a colliery later in life, one of the biggest collieries, I think the biggest colliery in South Wales, Merthyr. And, but as a younger man, he had a job looking after the Marquis of Bute's affairs. And by that, all of his agricultural assets, all of Marquis of Bute's mining assets, all his railways, all his shipping, all his urban developments, all the land that he owned, and William Thomas Lewis would have been in a perfect position to look at all the deeds for all the lands that the Marquis of Bute had, and so therefore he would have known everything about the Welsh history. Hence, his family commissioned this beautiful window in his memory, and it was dedicated to the church, I think, in 1919. I can't quite see that. I think it's 1919 it was dedicated. In a couple of years, King Arthur was removed from all the Welsh school history books in, I suspect, what might have been a tit-for-tat hit on the Welsh for declaring their true heritage and Arthur's existence. You going?
What's interesting about this then, Tim?
This is a monument here to the Right Honourable John Nicol, who died in 1853 in Rome. What I find interesting about this, I don't know much about the younger John Nicol, for whom this is his tomb, but his father was I believe he was a judge, and I don't know if it was quarter session, but he was an advisor anyway to Parliament, and he was a legal advisor to Parliament. I forget which particular arm of government. And he bought Merthyr Mawr House. He married locally, bought Merthyr Mawr House, which had, and spent a massive amount of money redesigning it. He knocked it down, rebuilt it, but the house had a library of over 30,000 books, many of them local. So John Nicol Sr., again, would have known all about the local Glamorgan histories, and he married into a local family. So he would have known all about that. It's very interesting that he is here again in this chapel.
Yeah. So who do we have here then?
So this is a very ancient tomb, and they just call this, very interestingly, nobody, it appears, is willing to put a name on this tomb. And in recent times, it's just become known as the Cadaver Tomb.
Right. There's two of them in Wales, isn't there? There's one in Tenby.
Yeah, and if you're a cadaver, it means you're corruptible, so you are not a saint. All right? And to be a saint, you either had to be a king who turned to the church, or you had to be a bishop. And Wilson and Blackett have done their research and are absolutely certain that this is the tomb of King Myrig, who never became a saint, and as the stonework shows, is a corrupted figure on top of the grave slab. So if we have Myrig, we have Arthur, we have Tudrig, Arthur's grandfather, Myrig, Arthur's father, and Morgan, Arthur's son, who was a very respected king. They're all here in this little chapel, which incidentally measures 27 by 15, or is it 25 by 15, whatever it was. It measures the same. So could this be the oldest spot in the church? And the several layers down, there actually be that church 5 or 6 layers down.
5 or 6 layers down, yeah. So this is St. Dyfrig's chapel,
Yeah.
refurbished by Freemasons.
What I didn't say to you is, coincidentally, Lord Baron Merthyr, up there,
Mentioned on the
William
window.
Thomas Lewis, he went to school in Cardiff, and his school teacher was a gentleman called Taliesin Williams, who was none other than the son of Iolo Morganwg, who would have, the two of them between them would have known every single scrap of ancient Welsh, South Wales history possible.
So they could well be behind encapsulating all that knowledge
Yeah.
into that small area.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Fabulously interesting.
And this guy, Taliesin Williams, he would have known all that. So these people were in the know.
So if you were in the know and you had a lot of money, which these people seem to have, wouldn't you, what was the first thing you would do if you won the lottery? You'd try to buy up the sites, wouldn't you? So do you think they bought up the sites anyway?
Oh. John Nicol bought a very particular piece of land, which means that, yeah, he knew what was there and why it was there. And that was down by St. Peter's Church.
Which was bought up by Alan Wilson and Barham Blackett at one point in time.
So yeah, the gentleman knew it. That was the link.
So what is it, Ogmore then and Merthyr Mawr?
At Ogmore, you've got a stone with Arthur's name on it, giving a land grant to the church. And at Merthyr Mawr, you've got a stone at the back. There's a shed at the back with all the stones in. And there's a Paula stone there, which is Paul, who was a brother of Arthur II. So there's a strong link with Merthyr Mawr and all of the Vale of Glamorgan over to here. Wow. Massive links.
So this was dedicated to St. Dyfrig, and this is St. Dyfrig down here then?
There's Dyfrig's tomb there. And you've got the tomb of Dyfrig, who crowned Arthur king. He was Bishop of Llandaff, he was Archbishop, he was also made Archbishop of Caerleon, and he crowned Arthur king. Can't remember which year, but Marig lived a long time, and Arthur had to wait a long time to be king. Seen that somewhere before, haven't we? There's a little effigy of said to be Christ preaching from the pulpit, looking down on Dyfrig.
Somewhere in Wales, no doubt.
Yeah, well, Dyfrig was from Herefordshire. Erging, isn't it? Herefordshire.
What are the symbols on the plaque there?
You've got an early Christian cross. You've got
Jacob's ladder.
You've got Jacob's ladder. You've got the rough and smooth ashlar, hammers.
Magic mushrooms,
Yeah.
Arwen,
Or inverted Arwen, yeah.
inverted Arwen, magic mushrooms.
Yeah. You've got a sword.
Oh yeah, sword.
You've got what looks like 3 cockerels. You've got the caducei, which is a serpent wound around the staff.
What's this? Hammers.
Yeah.
And a leg there. Is that a leg?
Looks like it. And a leek.
What's that?
Don't know. It looks like something's
Being cut out.
fallen out of there.
The so-called Celtic cross. No Celts in Britain, Ireland, Scotland.
I don't know anything about Celtic.
So what's the significance of these particular banners, Tim?
Well, the rearmost one with the ravens on and the chevron on is, I think, a banner of Owen, and I'm not sure if that's Urian Regid or if there's a grave to King Owen down at Cowbridge, between Llantryston and Cowbridge, a place called Ystrad, funnily enough, and there is a massive grave mound there, which would show that it's an early one. So there's that flag in the cathedral, and the one nearest us would be boat, portcullis, and the wooded scene in the centre panel. Strangely enough, those are all emblems belonging to some of the 10 tribes, or the lost tribes of Israel, who were never lost. 10 tribes, 12 tribes. Anyway, we've got the ship, which is Zebulon. We've got the portcullis, which is the tribe of Levi. We've got the trees, which are the tribe of Asher. And I'm not sure what the figure is, whether it's a wolf or whatever. I have to look into it. But there's possibly a third one there that might be Naphtali or Benjamin. But you've got a flag there that's got direct links with very, very early heraldry, which, as I said to you earlier, we're always told that heraldry started with the Normans. I think you'll find that all those are a weeny bit earlier than the Normans. And the colours, there is in some of the Wilson Blackett works a very distinct list of 6 or 8 colours, which so you've got black and white, you've got blue and green, you've got red and yellow, and in the British tradition they're actually signifying directions and life and death and something else as well. But they're very early recognised symbols of the British, which again have links back to the heraldry and the emblematic system of the early Hebrews. There we go.
Impressive. And it's in Llandaff Cathedral. Three faces carved onto one. You only see two at a time generally. And that goes back to pre-Christian, Druidic, maybe earlier. I was drawn in here then. I had a pull come in here. Discovered by the Bishop of Llandaff, April 1870, embedded in the back wall of the shed over the dairy well.
Well, that's by the bishop's. It's by that castle thing. Can't tell you much more about it, Paul. That's it.
What's an ashlar?
Ashlars, you either get smooth or rough ashlar, and it's stone. So the base of that is smooth ashlar.
What are they saying it? I'm not saying anything about that. We're talking about that panel there.
Yeah.
If you go to St. Fagans, they've got quite a lot of stones down there in the inside parts of the museum.
Whereabouts?
Who have we got here, Tim?
This is St. Teilo, and there was a bit of a battle, I understand, between Llandailo Church and Llandaff for him to come back, because I think at one point he was buried down at Llandailo, or Llandilo, down on the edge of Carmarthenshire, eastern edge of Carmarthenshire. I don't know when he was brought back.
Why is he important, St. Teilo?
Again, he was supposed to be one of the founding saints here. So,
and whose book is taken up to Lichfield Cathedral? Isn't that?
Book of Llandaff, also known as the Liber Landavensis, and then more latterly claimed to be the Book of Chad, but it's up at Lichfield. Was that Staffordshire, I think it is? And I haven't been to Lichfield Cathedral, but it's held up there. And of course, it's a wonderful record of what was going on down here. And there were some shenanigans going on. I think it was loaned to a guy called Stapleton at some point, and then subsequently disappeared and came back. But I think at the time that it disappeared, Llandaff Cathedral was in a ruinous state. But definitely purloined, definitely nothing to do with Lichfield, and nothing to do with Chat. There are all these books that are so fundamental and important to our histories, and they're all there. All the histories are there. Worcester and Blackett done a stupendous life's work.
Yeah.
They've probably done in their lifetime what the amount of work that it would take a score of other people to do. And it's just phenomenal.